Hi guys, it's me Chazza HD and welcome to the Practice 2 watch along for the 2019 Belgian Grand Prix, the famous and best track in the world in my opinion, the Spa Francorchamps circuit in Belgium in the Ardennes Forest. And thankfully guys, Formula 1 is back from the summer break. The summer break really did fly by, thankfully, because now after the 4 great races we had before the summer break, now we have 9 races to go, and I think definitely this weekend and for the rest of the season we are going to have plenty of races that are going to be very good. And we're starting this weekend of course at Spa. Hopefully you guys are doing well on what is for me a Friday afternoon, and hopefully you will be watching along with me practice 2 for the Belgian Grand Prix. But if you can't and you're say not able to watch it, then if you can only listen, then that's absolutely fine, because I'll keep you up to date with exactly what is going on at the circuit. But as you can see in the top left, we have about 29 minutes to go until the session gets underway. So before we get to the session, let's first look at the results of practice 1 earlier on. Now, it was a dominant performance by Ferrari, but we have seen this before, of course, and they've gone on to fail. Sebastian Vettel was P1, Charles Leclerc P2, and then 9/10 off the fastest time in P3 was Max Verstappen. Very impressive performance by Alexander Albon in P4, ending up only, 600ths of a second behind his teammate Max Verstappen. Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton P5 and P6, but as you can see, they were only on the medium tyres. And then Lance Stroll was P7, Daniel Ricciardo P8, Perez P9, Carlos Sainz P10, and then outside the top 10, Hülkenberg, Norris, Raikkonen, Grosjean, Giovinazzi, Magnussen, Kvyat, Gasly, Latifi faster than Kubica down there. Of course, Latifi is a Friday practice driver. Russell will be in the car for practice 2. But now, let's get into a quick preview of how I think the teams are going to look in practice 2 and what I expect from the teams this weekend in general. So we'll start off with, of course, the Silver Arrows Mercedes. Now, in practice 1, they definitely sandbagged a lot. Lewis Hamilton did also have a throttle issue, not a power unit issue, as Mercedes now do have the new Spec 3 power unit in their car. But they were definitely sandbagging quite a lot in practice 1, so definitely expect them to be a lot closer to Ferrari if they are still not fastest in practice 2. I think they'll definitely be at the absolute worst within, say, half a second or half a second off rather. So they're going to still look strong, definitely in that middle sector. That's where you need to look out for Mercedes, because in that middle sector they're going to be so good. Down the straights, not so much, because Ferrari still have just so much power compared to anyone else. But definitely in practice 2, they'll be pushing harder. And for this weekend, even though Ferrari are expected over a single lap to, have the quickest car, don't count Mercedes out, because they're still going to be right there. And I still think they'll end up in qualifying, for example, still getting pole position. So they might not be there all the time, but definitely watch out for them. They're going to be there when it matters most later on in the weekend. Next up is Ferrari, and yeah, Ferrari over a single lap, you would have to expect Ferrari to have the best car, because in the first and third sector, power is everything, and Ferrari have so much of it. Especially in qualifying mode, they have about a 0.4 of a second gap to anyone else down the big long straights, and that is a lot of lap time to be gaining in a straight line. So over a lap, Ferrari are the team to beat, but as we've seen in the past, things can go wrong for Ferrari, whether it is a reliability issue, a driver error, something like that. So just because they have the fastest car, as we have seen in 2019 at plenty of races, that doesn't mean they're going to be, all of a sudden dominating this weekend, because we've seen so many times this season where they've had a quick car in practice or during the entire weekend and they still haven't won the race. So In practice too, because of how they are normally in practice, I think Ferrari will probably end up at the top. But again, later on in the weekend, I think even if they do end up still, ending up on pole position or something like that, the gap between them and the rest will come down because definitely teams like Mercedes and Red Bull are not pushing as hard as Ferrari do on a Friday. Now, next up is Red Bull Racing. And for Max Verstappen, because he's not taking a grid penalty this weekend, Max, over a single lap, I don't think Max will really be in for a shout of even a top three. I just don't think the Red Bull car is quite close enough over a single lap to be in that type of position. But when it comes to race pace, I think Max Verstappen will be in that Red Bull car looking very good. So today for Red Bull with Max Verstappen is really about getting the setup right for the race, because again, in qualifying, they're not going to be, getting pole position. And by the way, just to inform you guys about the weather for the rest of the weekend, today it is sunny without any real clouds, and then tomorrow it is 30 degrees Celsius and again full sun, and then Sunday it does drop down to about 20 degrees Celsius, but it still, I think, will be sunny, so there won't be any rain that will help Max in qualifying or anything like that. But yeah, for them today it's really about getting the setup right for the race, because they're not going to be there over a single lap. For Alexander Albon, even though he was very close to Max in practice one, which is exactly what Red Bull want to see from Alexander Albon, compared to what Pierre Gasly was doing, Albon is going to be taking a grid penalty for this weekend's race, because he is taking on, I believe, the new Honda power unit, the upgraded Honda power unit. So also for him, it will be about this session, trying to get the right setup for the race, because even though Albon will be starting from around about, the back, he can still come through and finish 7th or 8th. So, there is still a lot of work to be done, because, he can be in there nicely for the race for sure. And it will be interesting to see, of course, how that new Honda power unit is doing for Albon. But for Red Bull, it's really, today's session for them, it's really about when it comes to the race simulations, how are they going to do when it comes to that? And hopefully we'll get a good indication as to the pace of the Red Bull car in those race simulations. Now, let's get into the midfield. Now, also taking grid penalties, because the new Renault power unit is also coming to this Grand Prix, is Renault, the entire team. That's Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. So in terms of one lap pace, nothing for them really matters. I mean, they're not taking a massive grid penalty. I think it's only 5 places on the grid. But with Renault, with the way they are at the moment, it's not like they're going to be starting P7 and P8. So, even if they have a normal qualifying, they're still going to be basically at the back. So, really, the one lap pace for Renault doesn't really matter this weekend. And also, they're going to be like Red Bull, really trying to look for the best setup with their car for the race. Because I think in the race, Renault definitely have a better chance of a good result than they do when it comes to pace over a single lap. Now, also, just to update you guys when it comes to power units and who's bringing a new power unit and, new upgrades. Also, Mercedes have a new upgrade for their power unit, the new Spec C or, Spec 3 power unit that has come to this Grand Prix. Also, what is it? Albon has it with the Honda. So does Daniel Kvyat. Gasly and Verstappen in the Red Bull and Toro Rosso will, I think, get a grid penalty for Monza. So, yeah, they'll be getting penalties for that. And Ferrari, I don't believe, have actually upgraded their power unit for this weekend. I believe Ferrari are going to be introducing their Spec 3 engine at the Italian Grand Prix, of course, their home race. So Ferrari are probably on their last race with this current power unit. I don't know if it's the Spec 1 or 2. Probably the Spec 2, but that's the situation when it comes to power units. Next up, McLaren, also Carlos Sainz will be taking a penalty because of the new Renault power unit. Lando Norris will not, so McLaren do have, a stake in the game today when it comes to pace over a single lap. And McLaren, even though this morning their car looked good, but in the timesheets wasn't that high, I think McLaren will be, once they really start to push it, I think McLaren will be absolutely fine. I think Lando and Carlos will be right up there, P7, P8, P9, even P10 at the absolute worst. So I think things for McLaren, are looking very good, and I expect them to have another good weekend. Next up is Alfa Romeo. Now, you may have heard that Kimi Räikkönen has some kind of muscle pull on his leg. Kimi is fine. He is absolutely fine. He drove this morning and was not quick compared to other people, but he was quicker than his teammates. So obviously Kimi Räikkönen is absolutely fine. And Marcus Ericsson, him coming to this weekend and not going to the IndyCar race in Portland, basically, is a waste of time. So yeah, Kimi is absolutely fine. And pace-wise for this weekend, I think that Kimi, at least, should be getting in that top 10. Of course, he wasn't in there in practice one, but I think he will be in there later on in the weekend. And Alfa should have a good car, and a good enough car to get into the top 10. Next up, Haas. Now, interesting news of Haas, not only with them, but also their title sponsor, Rich Energy. If you can call them their title sponsor anymore. So first off, both Haas drivers are using the current spec of aerodynamics, or the current upgrades. That's what the two Haas drivers are using. Roman is not using the older spec of car anymore. They're now using the current spec, and now they're going to hope that the current spec of Haas car is actually good enough for both drivers to be better than they were in previous races. But the big news to come from their title sponsor is that you guys will remember Williams' story in the news we covered, that Williams' story was removed as the basically owner or director of Rich Energy. There's been news that Williams' story has returned to that position. So I have absolutely no idea what's going on at that company. I don't understand anything anymore. I don't get why there was this whole drama over a coup within the team or within the company. I don't understand what has happened for him to come back to that company, but that is the news, that Williams' story is back at the head of Rich Energy. Very bad news, of course, because he really has embarrassed his company on a big level, and also has embarrassed the Haas team. So not good news at all. And the saga between their title sponsor Rich Energy and Haas is going to continue for sure, because you can guarantee that guy will not go down quietly. Next up is Toro Rosso. This morning, Toro Rosso were really slow. That's not really a surprise, because this has never really been a great track for Toro Rosso. They've never really had a car that's quick in a straight line during the V6 hybrid era, and they've never really had, I would say, great results at Spa. So it's not really a surprise, but I didn't think they'd be, say, down in P17 and P18. That is quite poor. But the one interesting thing to look at from practice one was that Pierre Gasly was 18th and 0.3 of a second slower than Daniel Kvyat in the same car. Now, I know it's only practice one, but if that is the theme of the weekend, then it's not looking good for Gasly at all. It's really not looking good for Gasly at all, because he has to be beating Daniel Kvyat in the final 9 races if he is going to have any hope of either getting back into the Red Bull or even getting into another car somewhere else in Formula 1. So, not good for Gasly, and hopefully he cannot be that far off Daniel, because if he is, then his stock will just continue going further and further down. But for the team, Daniel is taking a grid penalty. Pierre is not, I believe. So Daniel will start behind Pierre Gasly unless Pierre has an absolute mare of a qualifying session tomorrow. But pace-wise, for Pierre and for Toro Rosso, it's not really looking that good anyway. Next up is Racing Point. Here is this nice picture of when the engine cover came off Lance Stroll's car in practice 1. So you can try and get a good look at the Mercedes power unit in there. But for Racing Point, so far this weekend, things are looking good. Lance Stroll, though, is going to be taking a penalty because he also has exceeded the amount of parts he can use with his power unit. So he will also be taking a penalty for this Grand Prix. I'm not sure if it's a 5-place penalty or he has to start at the back penalty. But he does have a grid penalty of some sort that means he will take a drop on the grid. But looking at practice 1 and also looking at the new parts they brought to this weekend, things are looking good for Racing Point. In practice 1, they were P7 and P9. And also, sorry about my throat, it's as ever sore. They also brought a new front wing that they were trying to bring back at Hockenheim in Hungary, but they couldn't bring it because it didn't pass the crash test. But finally it did, and they brought it. So good news for Racing Point on that front. And pace-wise, they look good. They really do look good. And it's not a massive surprise because they always go well at Spa. They always go well at Spa. We know that. 10 years ago, they almost won the race. So they're going to be good this weekend for sure. And definitely in practice too. Look out more so for Sergio Perez than Lance Stroll, because Perez doesn't have a penalty. So if Perez is in P8, P9, then it really is, looking good going forward for the Racing Point team. And at the back, of course, is Williams. And even though in Hungary they looked closer with Russell, and maybe if Russell can out-qualify his teammate by 1.2 or 1.3 seconds, maybe Russell might be fighting with other drivers in the race or in qualifying. But most likely Williams are going to be at the very back again. Now, before I get to you guys in the live chat, I will come to you guys in just a moment. There is one thing I need to cover before I come to you guys in the live chat. And that is the provisional. And yes, it is provisional. As you can see at the bottom, it is subject to FIA approval. This is the provisional 2020 Formula 1 calendar. Now, the races in the second half of the season, it's basically the same as this season. There's no real difference. But in the first half of the season, up until about Silverstone, there is quite a few differences in the calendar. So let's now go through them. So the first race will be on the 15th of March at Melbourne. But instead of Bahrain being 2 weeks after, Australia and Bahrain is now a back-to-back. So Bahrain will be 1 week after the Australian Grand Prix. And that is great that they've done that, because that will really help the way F1 is portrayed in the media if, F1 has a great start to the season with a back-to-back. Then, on the 5th of April, new Grand Prix, Vietnam and the streets of Hanoi. Can't wait for that. And then 2 weeks after that, it is Shanghai. And then, in May, at the start of May, on the 3rd of May, the first full weekend of May will be the new Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. That is going to be, atmosphere-wise, a great race. In terms of the racing, I don't think it'll be that great, but we can always hope. And then a week after that will be the Spanish Grand Prix. So that's a back-to-back, Holland and Spain. And then 2 weeks after that, Monaco. And then 2 weeks after that is Baku. Baku has, of course, been moved from the end of April now to the first weekend of June. And then a week after that is Canada. So if Baku next season can be exciting again like it was in 2017 or 2018, then we're going to have 2 mental races in a row, Baku and Canada. I cannot wait for that. And then, of course, 2 weeks after is France, then Austria. That's a back-to-back. And then Silverstone is a week later than it normally is. And then Hungary is the last race before the summer break. And then as we go to the rest of the races, the only difference is that the US Grand Prix next year will be before the Mexican Grand Prix, when this year the Mexican Grand Prix will be taking place before the US Grand Prix. So yeah, in the second half of the season, it's basically the same as this season. But my thoughts of the calendar are, I think, mostly good. I think the only disappointing thing is no race at Hockenheim. That really is disappointing after the classic race we had. But simply, Hockenheim don't have the money to hold an F1 race or to pay for an F1 race, because the only reason Hockenheim was on the calendar for 2019 was because Mercedes helped the track pay for the race. And Mercedes, before the German Grand Prix, not after like some people want to say because they had a bad race. It was actually before they said this, before the race. Mercedes are not going to pay again, you know, for the track to stay on the calendar, because it's not their job to. You know, they don't own the circuit, they don't run the circuit, they have a grandstand there, but they don't run it. So, no, not their job to. And yet, it's a shame that Hockenheim is not on the calendar, but at the end of the day, money talks, doesn't it? That's the reason Spain is on the calendar ahead of it, or Russia, or Abu Dhabi, or Singapore. So, you know, it is a shame, but you know, that's just the reality of the situation. If in an ideal world we could pick a calendar that was great, of course Hockenheim would be on it, but money really does talk when it comes to getting onto the calendar, because that's the only reason about 3 or 4 of these races are actually on the calendar, is because of money. So that is a shame, but there you go. But if you look at the calendar, I actually think it's a pretty good calendar. And because of some different dates for certain races and a couple new races, I'm actually really excited for the 2020 calendar. For, of course, 2020. But guys, let me know in the live chat, what do you think of the new 2020 calendar? And do you agree with the calendar? And also, let me know for all the teams, what do you expect for all the teams? Do you think Mercedes will still be up there? Do you think Ferrari do have the fastest car? How do you think Red Bull will do and Alexander Albon will do? And who do you think will be good and not so good in the midfield? Let me know in the comments and the live chat, and I'll respond to you guys in a moment. But just to say, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as I will be doing a watch along for qualifying and the race, and we do that for every race weekend, non-stop. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my homepage, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. And also, don't forget to hit the like button, because that really does help out the channel getting found and stuff like that. But before I get to you guys, I'm going to have a quick drink to clear my sore throat, and then I'll come to you guys in a moment. Right, and also, we'll go on to a different picture. And now we'll see what you guys are all saying in the chat. Han Solo, Hockenheim is a historic track and European. Sad to see it go, but at least the Dutch Grand Prix has returned. Also very historic track. Last race win from Niki Lauda. Yeah, absolutely. Is a historic track. Younger brother saying volume is low and struggling to hear as well. I haven't changed anything, so if you just raise your volume a bit higher, then it should be absolutely fine. Right, let me find some other comments here. And Solo says Gasly will never be in the Red Bull again. His driving style doesn't match the car and he isn't able to adapt like Max was in 2016 when he stepped into Kvyat's car and won his very first race for Red Bull. Yeah, I don't think he will. I don't think he will be back in the Red Bull. But if by some miracle he does still have a chance of getting back into the Red Bull, then at least beating Kvyat would be enough evidence maybe to put him back in that car ahead of Kvyat and then maybe Albon if Albon struggles. But we'll have to see. But if Albon can be as close to Max Verstappen as he was in practice 1 and he can do that on a mostly consistent basis, then I think Albon will probably get the seat because I think that's what Red Bull are looking for. They're looking for someone who isn't going to beat Max Verstappen, but someone who is going to be close to Max, so to push Max, even harder, and to, complement him because Gasly was not. He was not getting close enough, nor was he complementing his results. Let me move on to this picture. By the way, practice 2 underway in just under 3.5 minutes time. I'll get the running order booted up in a moment. Right, let me find some other comments here. Matthew Felton, I'd like to see a hill climb street race. Wouldn't care what country, but like a 4-lane highway up a winding mountain with a tight bend and a back downhill. That would be great. That absolutely would be great. No doubt about it. Also, I'll move on to this nice picture of the Red Bull. And by the way, guys, once the session gets underway, I just need to warn you guys, because I haven't done a watch along since the 5th of August, I think it was, I will be a bit rusty. So please bear with me in, finding a new picture, doing the timer and doing the running order. Because, yeah, I haven't done it in basically a month, so I'm a bit rusty when it comes to that. But yeah, by the end of the session I'll be absolutely fine. I'll be back in the rhythm, as they say. Astro Stevo says Bathurst is the Aussie mountain. Would be fun. Can't see F1 going there though. No, they absolutely, I don't think will. It's not wide enough for a Formula 1 car. Maybe old Formula 1 cars from, say, the, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s, maybe they would fit on those tracks, but the current cars are so wide, they wouldn't be able to even get one car to go through those corners without hitting the barriers. Right, let me find another comment. Spider Monkey Chaz, any Racing Point progress? Yep, Racing Point look good so far this weekend, and they do have a new front wing, which I mentioned earlier. I think I did. If I didn't, then yeah, they have a new front wing. Someone else saying, not exciting for 2020 at all. What is the point having boring racing? Liberty Media is all about money, and they're gonna ruin the sport. I will admit, I am losing my faith with Liberty Media. But when it comes to the calendar, except for there not being a Hockenheim race, I'm not that bothered about the calendar in a angry or disappointed way. I think the calendar is actually pretty good. And I do especially like that Baku and Canada is a back-to-back, and that Australia and Bahrain is a back-to-back. That was a very good move by Liberty to put those races, as back-to-back races. But it is now seem to be time to get this session underway. So let me get the text and timers ready. By the way, the running order you're seeing on your screen is not the current order. I haven't updated that since the race in Hungary. So once we get all 20 times on the board for the first time in the session, then I will update it to what it actually is. And of course, if you don't know, practice 2 is a 90-minute session. And yeah, it will be getting underway very, very soon. And also, let me get Twitter up. So if you are new to watch-alongs on this channel, what I do is, of course, I can't show live coverage for obvious reasons. So what I do is show as many pictures as I can. I will commentate on what is going on from the track so you guys actually know what is going on. And, you know, provide like a radio style commentary. I'll have the running order running on the bottom of the screen, as you can see, so you know what the live order is. And also, just to let you guys know, I do have like a 45-second to minute delay because of also YouTube, the live stream delay, but also because of the device I'm watching it on. So if you do want to sync up, then just pause your TV for about a minute and then press play again. You should be around synced up with what I am. If you don't want to do it though, then no problem. But there you go. As on my TV, we're currently seeing Max Verstappen. His car, no tyres on it. He doesn't plan to go out in a hurry, does Max. As Charles Leclerc is now getting his helmet on, so he will definitely be going out, I think, pretty soon, as Lewis Hamilton is busy signing autographs in the paddock. And yet we'll be underway very, very soon. And there you go. We are underway. The timer is about a second behind what it actually is, but there you go. We are now underway, and the first car that is going to come out of the pit lane is Kevin Magnussen and then Romain Grosjean. Both are on the medium compound tyres. By the way, just to let you guys know with tyres, the hardest compound of tyres are actually at the Grand Prix this weekend, the C1, C2 and C3. So Pirelli going very, very conservative on tyres this weekend. Not quite sure why, but you know, there you go. That's what they feel is best, and hopefully that doesn't hurt the racing this weekend. But then again, it is very hot this weekend at Spa, so that's probably another reason why they've done that, why they've gone for such a hard compound of tyre, because we've had plenty of very hot races in 2019 and it is unseasonably hot at Spa this weekend. Tomorrow it's going to be 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, which is very hot for Spa. But we now have also the two Williamses on circuit. Russell and Kubica, of course. Latifi was in the car this morning. As we're seeing now Alex Albon getting into his car. And let me just get this picture up of the Haas. There you go, of Kevin Magnussen. And I'll quickly just adjust it. And there you go. So, first cars on track, the two Haases and the two Williamses. So the two Haases will be setting their lap times. We're setting their lap times very soon. By the way, Astro, the running order running along the bottom of the screen is from Hungary. It's not actually from practice 1 or practice 2. But again, once everyone sets their first lap time, then I'll update it to what it actually is. But no one yet has set a lap time, so there's no point doing it yet. But yeah, once everyone does set their time, then I'll do it. As Kevin Magnussen starts his first flying lap of practice 2. Let's see if the current spec of Haas car is actually working. On Sky F1, they're showing a split screen, so I can't quite see the Haas car as well as I'd want to. But he's currently now coming through onto the Kemmel Straight, where his power unit in his car will really be performing well, because of course he has the Ferrari power unit, the strongest in Formula 1. He now comes into the middle sector. And the Haas not looking too bad as he comes down to the hairpin before the left-handed, I think it's Liège or the no-name corner. And car looking slightly skittish on the rear, but not too bad as he now comes into Pouon. Great corner. And the Haas looks absolutely fine to me in the fast corners. As he now comes into Stabilo 1. And now comes to the end of the middle sector. Now comes to second Stabilo. And yeah, car looks to me to be absolutely fine. Also on track is Daniel Ricciardo. So we have 5 cars on circuit, and all of them I think now are on a lap to set, their first time of the day. As Kevin Magnussen comes round the final chicane, comes to the line, and Kevin Magnussen opens the DRS and sets a 1:48, I think that is. I can't quite see. Romain Grosjean goes second on I think a 49 flat. A 49.0. Half a second off. And now we've got Sebastian Vettel on circuit on an outlap. As I think the next drivers to set a time will be the 2 Williams drivers, Russell and Kubica. Then it'll be Ricciardo, and then after that, Sebastian Vettel. And yet Russell sets a time, and it's a 1:53.9, so very slow time. So yeah, Magnussen currently P1 on a 48.5. Then it's Grosjean half a second down on a 49.0. And then Russell sets a time, but it's not really a competitive time. Sebastian Vettel is on an outlap on the medium compound, the medium compound tyres. By the way, I've just seen someone trying to correct me there. If I do get the corner names wrong for certain corners, I do apologise about that, but there are so many corner names at this circuit that sometimes it sometimes is confusing. So I'll try to get it right as the weekend goes on for sure. As Lewis Hamilton is now about to come out on the track. We also have Leclerc on the track, the 2 Toro Rossos, and the 2 Racing Point cars as well. As Daniel Ricciardo came out on track, but then went back in for some reason. So maybe he has some kind of issue with his car. We'll have to see. Hopefully he does not have an issue with his car. Sebastian Vettel now starts his first flying lap of the session as he now comes up to Eau Rouge and Radion. And let me just quickly get a different picture on the screen as he flashes through to Sebastian Vettel. Now up to the Kemmel Straight, opens the DRS, and this is really where the Ferrari is at its absolute best. And the Ferrari is already 0.7 of a second faster than Magnussen with the same power unit. After the first sector, very quick is Sebastian Vettel, as he now comes into the left-hander just before Pouon. And the Ferrari definitely looking a lot better this weekend than it was in Hungary. Of course, the Hungarian Grand Prix track is not supposed to suit the Ferrari car. There's the Williams and Russell on screen. As Vettel now comes into the middle sector endpoint. Let's see how far up he is on Magnussen. He is 1.5 seconds up. Very quick first lap here from Sebastian Vettel on the medium tyres as he now comes into Blanchimont. Of course, easy flat out. Even in the wet, it's just about flat out because of how great these cars are aerodynamically, as he now comes into the final chicane, the bus stop chicane. And he will now come to the line, opens the DRS, and Sebastian Vettel goes P1 by 2.5 seconds on a 46 flat. But we have only had 4 lap times so far. Kubica hasn't set a time, and also we've got Leclerc out there trying to set a lap. As we're seeing a replay of Sebastian Vettel we went off the track there on the exit of Pouon. That can't be a problem with the car. That's probably he maybe accidentally forgot to turn in to the rest of the exit of that corner. As now Charles Leclerc is coming round. Romain Grosjean goes up to P2 on a 48.2 as Leclerc comes to the middle sector. And how fast is Charles Leclerc? Very fast on the medium tyres. He's 7/10 up on his teammate Sebastian Vettel and now comes into the final sector where Ferrari should be beating everyone. As he now comes through Blanchimont and up to the bus stop chicane as Pierre Gasly goes P2 in the Toro Rosso. And Charles Leclerc, as we're seeing Martin Brundle, hopefully we won't cut away. Charles Leclerc comes to the line and Leclerc goes P1 by about 7/10 of a second on a 45.3, I believe. So Ferrari 1 and 2 straight away. Not a surprise, to be honest, because we know Ferrari, as Crystal Racing saying, Ferrari are going to bottle it somehow again. Yep, they probably will. They're always Ferrari, as we know, and I'll get a picture on screen of them in a minute. Ferrari are always kings of practice, but then are losers when it comes to qualifying and the races. They really are. As, here you go, Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari, currently P2. As we are only just over 10 minutes into practice 2. There you go. As we're currently seeing Martin Brundle at Eau Rouge on a very, very beautiful day, I have to say, at Spa. It's rare for Spa to be in such a, great sunshine. Normally it's overcast or at best sun and cloud. Very rare you get clear skies at Spa. But there you go. As Martin Brundle watching a Ferrari, then an Alfa going through Eau Rouge. And hopefully they cut away from this soon because I want to see the other times on the board. By the way, hello to Nib, who's in the chat. Great to see you, mate. And also good afternoon to Max Claydon. Great to see you as well, mate. And anyone who is who has joined the stream, thank you for coming along and great to see you all here. But we are only 12 minutes into practice 2 and we haven't got all 20 times on the board as of yet. Once we do, I'll update the running order to what it is, as we've only got really 8 proper times on the board, as Perez has gone P3, about a second off Charles Leclerc. Here comes Carlos Sainz through Blanchimont on the medium compound tyres. Let's see where Carlos Sainz can go. He does have, I believe, a grid penalty for the race this weekend, as he now comes through the bus stop chicane. And Carlos goes, where does he go? P4, about 1.7 seconds down on Charles Leclerc. Very, very good first lap by Leclerc there on a 45.3 for sure. As we've got Daniel Kvyat on an outlap. We've also got Hülkenberg on an outlap. Kimi Räikkönen has just gone up to P5 in the Alfa Romeo, as Lewis Hamilton is about to come out onto the track. Antonio Giovinazzi goes P4. So good start for Alfa. And we're currently seeing Pierre Gasly going very slowly in the Toro Rosso at the moment. As we now get Daniel Ricciardo back out on track. And also is the Red Bull of Alexander Albon and Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes. So the only 2 cars not on circuit are the 2 biggest guns of 2019, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. As Sergio Perez is on another lap on the medium tyres, comes into, or now goes through the left-hander before Pouon, now comes to Pouon. And the Racing Point definitely looking good this weekend. Not really a surprise. There's traffic ahead though. But he'll go through this left and right, or right and left rather, chicane and be absolutely fine. As he now comes up to the middle sector. And there's a car kind of blocking his entry there. A bit of poor driving there. I think it was by Pierre Gasly. As now Perez comes up to Blanchimont. This will probably improve his time, but only slightly. This won't be a massive difference in lap time for Sergio Perez. As he now comes through the final chicane, and Perez does not improve. He's half a second, or rather 0.6 of a second slower than he was. As Lando Norris goes up to P5 in the McLaren. And now I'll try to find, if I can, a different picture. Nope, can't find one at the minute. But as soon as one becomes available, I'll put it on the screen. But we have about 13 times on the board so far, as we're 15 minutes into the session. Caldini were both Ferraris on hard tyres. Nope, they were on medium tyres. Basically, all the drivers so far have done their lap times on medium. So, yeah, Ferrari looking very quick out of the box. No pun intended. As Robert Kubica is the first one to go onto soft tyres in the Williams, as he now comes up to the end of the first sector, the end of the Camel Straight into Lecombe. 1.2 down already. Charles Leclerc shows you how slow Robert Kubica is in that car that is really, really slow. As he's now coming through the middle sector. Kevin Magnussen has just pitted. And Lewis Hamilton is now on an outlap. So the only driver not on circuit and has not set a time, of course, is Max Verstappen. As Gasly does another lap time, but stays in 13th place. Kubica is now coming up to the end of the middle sector. Car ahead won't trouble him massively. As, yet Kubica, despite being on the soft tyres, is on an absolutely terrible lap. On the soft tyres. He is 3 seconds down on Charles Leclerc after 2 sectors on tyres that are probably, you know, half a second to 3/4 of a second faster. Not great for Kubica, this is. And he now comes to the end of the lap, opens the DRS, and Robert Kubica goes 14th on a 49.5. Alexander Albon goes 5th in the Red Bull. As Daniel Ricciardo comes to the line, first time of the session, and he goes 5th on a 146.5. Valtteri Bottas goes up to P2, about 4/10 down on Charles Leclerc. And then it will be Lewis Hamilton to set a lap in the Mercedes, as Daniel Ricciardo is slowly but surely coming through Eau Rouge and Radion. And he has a car behind him, and I believe it is Lewis Hamilton or Valtteri Bottas. I'm not quite sure who that is behind him. But let me post a different picture before Hamilton sets his first time of practice 2. And it is of the 2 McLarens, who are currently in P9 and P10. And here comes Lewis Hamilton to the end of his lap on medium tyres. Where will Lewis Hamilton go? He's done a fastest middle sector, and Hamilton goes P2, 1/4 of a second off Charles Leclerc. So I'll update the order in a moment. Let me just get this picture on screen. There you go. 2 McLarens. Look like they're trying to do some slipstreaming there, which can work a lot at Spa, and also Monza, where we go to in a week's time. But at the moment, 20 minutes into practice 2, it's Charles Leclerc P1, Lewis Hamilton P2, Bottas P3, Vettel P4, Sergio Perez is P5. Nico Hülkenberg is 6th. He's currently on a lap though. Daniel Ricciardo is in 7th. Albon is 8th in the Red Bull. Everyone, by the way, is on mediums except for Russell and Kubica at the back. Giovinazzi is 9th. Norris is 10th. And then 11th is Carlos Sainz. P12 is Kimi Raikkonen. As Max Verstappen, by the way, still not on track. He must have an issue with his car because he would have wanted to get out on track by now. Stroll is 13th. Daniel Kvyat in the Toro Rosso is in 14th. And then it is, as Hülkenberg comes to the end of his lap, Grosjean is 15th. Magnussen is 16th as Hülkenberg comes across the line and stays in P6, does not improve his lap time. Magnussen is 16th, and then Pierre Gasly down in 17th. He really is not having a good time of it. And then 18th and 19th, Kubica and Russell and Verstappen is at the back. But saying that, he's now coming out onto track as we now go to an ad break on Sky F1. So until we come back from the break, that is your current order. Leclerc, Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel, Perez, Hülkenberg, Ricciardo, Albon, and then Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo. Lando Norris is P10, Carlos Sainz is P11, Kimi Raikkonen P12, P13 is Lance Stroll, P14 is Daniel Kvyat, P15 is Romain Grosjean, 16th is Kevin Magnussen, 17th is Pierre Gasly, 18th is Robert Kubica, 19th is George Russell, and at the back is Max Verstappen. So now that we've gone to an ad break, I'm going to quickly, guys, have a drink, and then I'll come to you guys in the chat quickly to read out your comments. Right, so let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Right, let me see what you guys are saying. By the way, just to let you guys know, we now have Nightbot in the live chat. So the reason we have that is so Nightbot can, without, say, me or Nib or Tonka, who are the moderators, so, you know, we don't have to keep repeating ourselves when we either talk or, you know, type. So that's the reason we now have Nightbot, and it should really help out around the live streams. Crystal Racing says Gasly should leave F1 after this year, especially if Kvyat beats him easily. If Kvyat does beat him easily, I don't see how Pierre Gasly can stay in Formula 1. I think the only place he goes to is Formula E, where, by the way, he has actually raced in Formula E before. So it's not like Gasly has no experience of Formula E. But yeah, if Kvyat beats him, you know, quite comfortably, then I don't see how Pierre can stay in Formula 1, because if Red Bull drop him, who is going to want him? Who's going to want him? Especially if teams think they have drivers who are better. So, yeah, I think Gasly is very close to the end of his Formula 1 career, if I'm honest. Right, let me find a few more comments. Any chance of rain this weekend? That's from mostly an F1 fan. Sadly, no. Today is mostly sunny. In fact, it's fully sunny and very hot at the circuit, considering it's Spa. Tomorrow, it's even hotter and it is full sunshine tomorrow. And then Sunday, the temperature does drop quite a lot. So rain is most likely to be on Sunday, but it's still supposed to be sunny on Sunday. So I don't think we'll have rain this weekend. And if we don't have rain this weekend, then the next time we'll get rain will probably be Suzuka, because Italy, it's very rare we get rain there. Same with Singapore and same with Russia. So if it don't rain this weekend, then yeah, no rain, I think, till Suzuka, which is a bit of a shame. But there you go, as we've now come back from the ad break, and Max Verstappen is currently on his lap on the medium tyres and has done a purple middle sector. Purple, of course, being the fastest of all. As he now comes through Blanchimont and up to the bus stop chicane at the end of the lap. Where will Max Verstappen go? And Max comes through now, and he should go into P2, I'd say. And yes, he does, and only 17 hundredths of a second off, I think. So, great first lap for Verstappen there. So he now goes up to P2. So let me update the rest of the order. So Leclerc is P1, Verstappen is P2, and then it is Lewis Hamilton in P3. P4 is Valtteri Bottas. 5th is Sebastian Vettel. I know he set his lap very early on compared to Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen, but surprised that he's that far down, to be honest. Perez is 6th as Lewis Hamilton on the medium tyres comes back into the pit lane. Perez is 6th, Hülkenberg is 7th, and it's Albon 8th. Ricciardo is 9th now. Giovinazzi is in 10th. And then it is, after that, it is Lance Stroll actually in P11. So McLaren now down in 12th and 13th. Not looking great so far this weekend, McLaren, in terms of the timesheets. The car, to me, looks fine, but obviously the timesheets are not quite showing that so far. Kimi Räikkönen P14. 15th is Daniel Kvyat. As we've said, Toro Rosso really not looking good this weekend. Neither are Haas at the moment, as Grosjean is 16th and Magnussen is 17th. Pierre Gasly, who, by the way, is 0.6 of a second down on Kvyat after the first runs in practice 2, is in 18th place. And then it is Kubica ahead of Russell, but I believe Russell is on a harder compound tyre and is still only a 10th slower. So that's embarrassing for Kubica, but there you go. And that is the current order with just over 1 hour to go. 1 hour and 4 minutes to go, to be exact. So, because of that, I will quickly get a different picture on the screen, and it will be of a driver who will have the most support this weekend, and that is, of course, Max Verstappen, because this is the closest race to his home country. So he will be the most supported this weekend for obvious reasons. And there you go, there he is. And let me quickly update that. There you go. And there you go. As Max is now on another lap. And he's now coming through the exit of La Source. And now comes up to Eau Rouge. And nope, he's going very slowly. So he's not actually going for another lap. Obviously, he wants to back off and maybe warm his tyres up again. I don't know. But he has decided to back off. But at the moment, P2, and to be that close to Charles Leclerc, I'm telling you, that's a very, very strong time from Max Verstappen. Very, very strong time. As is a replay of Verstappen at the bus stop, locking the inside front. No, I don't know why they're showing this. They're just showing the end of his lap. I thought we were going to see a lock up on the inside front, which is normally why you would show a replay of someone at the bus stop to show a lock up. But no, that is not what they showed. Yep, Verstappen probably will now come back into the pits, as he is the only driver on circuit, also is on circuit with George Russell. So, Russell and Verstappen, the only two drivers on circuit. Russell is now on the soft compound tyre, so Russell is going to absolutely obliterate his teammates' lap time. So we'll see what Russell can do. But yeah, Max Verstappen, I think, will be coming back into the pits very, very soon. Let me just quickly see what you guys are saying. And apparently, according to Nib, who I'm sure is listening to the team radio, Max is reporting loss of power. That's not good, because the plan is supposed to be Albon takes a grid penalty this weekend and then Max takes one for Monza. So they don't want to take another one, but if that's what needs to happen, then that is what needs to happen. And now, yeah, Russell went to 19th place, about 3.5 tenths faster than Robert Kubica. Doom Room Records, maybe Honda is trying some extreme mapping to go this fast. Maybe they pushed the power unit too hard on that lap. Who knows? Maybe he turned it up to full whack. And yet Max will be probably stuck in the pits for not a while, but, 20-30 minutes, I think. Honda back to their old cranky selves of 2015 to 2017. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Baldini, Lewis reported dust coming through his visor. That might be from someone ahead kicking up some dust on the exit of a corner. Like, for example, where the middle sector point is, the corner right after that, or in the middle of those two corners, those two right-handers, you can kick up some gravel. So that might be what he's complaining about. Someone ahead kicking up some gravel. Dinky, do you think Kvyat could beat Verstappen? No, I don't think he could, but it's not about that. It's not about beating Verstappen. It's about someone who would be close enough to Max Verstappen to give him a proper fight and to make sure, to keep Max honest and to push Max as hard as possible. But to, be up there, if the car's doing well, with Max Verstappen. That's what Daniel Ricciardo did. So that's really what you have to do if you're a teammate to Max Verstappen and you know that you are the number 2 driver. You've got to complement Max's results and complement the car's performance, but also you've got to be close enough to Max so if the car is doing well, you can be up there as well. Right, let me read some other comments. By the way, thank you, Stinky, who says, glad to hear your opinion. No problem. Let me find some other comments here. And let me find a good one. Albon needs experience in the Red Bull. Absolutely. Jungle Brother, is Albon and Max on the same tyre compound? Yep, they were. Max on the mediums and so is Albon. I will say though, Max did set his lap quite a bit after Albon, so Max would have had better grip for his lap than Albon would have had, because there would have been more grip, more rubber down on the track. So Max definitely did have an advantage with when he, did his lap. But still, he's a second faster than Albon after the first run. That's not exactly, doing better than Gasly, is it? For Albon, as we are quickly seeing on the TV, Racing Point's new front wing upgrade. And hopefully it gives them exactly what they need to improve the pace of the car. As now we have the 2 Haases on circuit on soft compound tyres. So get ready to see what Haas can do. Hopefully they can improve on a 16th and 17th, because that is not quite what they want. Haas want to be around, Giovinazzi Stroll area, 10th and 11th when it comes to pace over a single lap. They do not want to be down at the back, because you guys know, and I know, that because of their bad race pace, if they can't qualify well, then the race is going to be even worse. They've got to get as high a grid position as they can to limit, you know, the race result being as bad as it is actually going to be. And talking of Haas on the soft compound, here it is. Here is Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, and he'll be setting his first soft tyre lap in just a moment. As we're seeing a replay of Max Verstappen, I think when he was reporting his issue. Now we get to see Romain Grosjean coming through now, Eau Rouge and Raidillon, and now we get to see what the Haas car has. So here we go. On the Kemmel Straight, let's see what Grosjean is doing. Also, Sebastian Vettel is now out on circuit on an outlap on the soft tyres, so can't wait to see what Ferrari can do. As Grosjean now comes through to the hairpin, just before the, I think it's the no-name left-hander. I think it is a no-name left-hander. As now he comes down to Pouhon. Let's see what the Haas is like, and it is good. To be honest, because of how good the cars are these days, Pouhon is not really a big, you know, challenge anymore for the cars, but it is still a great corner to watch the cars go through. As Grosjean for the middle sector is only 0.3 off Charles Leclerc, so good lap so far, even though, yes, Leclerc was on medium tyres, and I'm sure Charles Leclerc will, you know, improve his lap a lot. This is a good lap so far for Romain Grosjean, as he now comes up to the bus stop chicane and goes wide at the first part of it. That really did hurt his lap. And he comes to the line and goes 6th, 0.7 down, but he did make an error at the bus stop, I think. So he cost himself probably 0.2 of a second, because if you go wide on entry to the bus stop, that affects your run into the second part and then your exit out of the chicane, because you're not taking the proper line, as Magnussen has backed off because he made a mistake on the exit of Les Combes, as Sebastian Vettel is on a soft tyre lap and has done, of course, the fastest first sector, as also Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas are on an outlap. So is Gasly, Giovinazzi, Leclerc, Sainz. So we're all getting them out now, as Vettel is 0.75 of a second up on Leclerc after the first two sectors, as he now comes onto the straight. Heading towards Blanchimont, this is where Ferrari and their supreme power unit really does kick in. As he comes up to the bus stop, braking hard, and the Ferrari goes wide on entry, and that's completely destroyed his run through the chicane. He would have lost about 3 or 4 tenths of a second. He does go fastest by 6 tenths, but he could have gone a second faster than Leclerc. He lost about 3 to 4 tenths of a second. Because again, if you go wide on entry, that affects your run into the second part of the chicane and your exit, because you're not taking a wide enough run into the exit of the chicane. So, yeah, big mistake on that lap for Vettel, and also earlier for Grosjean. As Valtteri Bottas now starts his soft tyre run. He has not improved on his first sector, but that's not really the important part of the lap when it comes to one lap pace. The middle sector is, as Valtteri now is coming through the second part of the middle sector. And Valtteri now coming up to the middle sector right about now. And Valtteri has done the purple middle sector. Not a surprise, because the Mercedes is a lot better in the middle sector than the Ferrari. But he is still 0.3 of a second down on Sebastian Vettel. But because Vettel made that error, if Valtteri keeps it clean, he should be able to be close to Vettel as he comes through the bus stop. And yep, this is a good run through the bus stop. And Valtteri now comes up to the line, and Valtteri Bottas goes P2, a quarter of a second down on Vettel. So, good run for Valtteri Bottas. And now we'll see in a moment what his teammate Lewis Hamilton can do. In a replay of Vettel, and simply the car understeered wide, and that is not really an error from the driver, that's more so the car, because as we have seen before, and as I've said before, the Ferrari is very bad on the front end. It's not a good car on the front end, and that's why at high aero circuits, Ferrari are miles off, as Hamilton has done a good lap so far. He also goes slightly wide into the first part of the chicane, but not as wide as Vettel. But he now comes to the line, and Lewis Hamilton goes P3. And yet he definitely went wide into the first part. Not massively, but it was enough. As Charles Leclerc is now... he's done the fastest first sector. Not surprised about that. And he's now coming up to the middle sector. Let's see what Charles can do. And Charles is 3.5 tenths up on Sebastian Vettel. Very good middle sector for Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. As he now comes through Blanchimont. And as long as he doesn't make a mistake, he will go P1. Comes into the bus stop, and not a great entry to the bus stop, but it was a lot better than his teammate. And Charles Leclerc comes to the line and goes P1 by 6 tenths of a second. Ferrari definitely have a very, 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 very quick car. You cannot doubt that whatsoever. Yes, the gap will close up in qualifying. It absolutely will. But as long as they don't make a mistake as a team, or the drivers don't, I think Ferrari look very, very good for pole position. You have to say so, with half of the session so far completed. But I'll quickly now post a picture of a Ferrari. It'll be Sebastian Vettel going through P1 as Grosjean running wide on the exit of the corner before P1. And here you go. There is Sebastian Vettel. And if Vettel had not made that error, I think Sebastian would probably be about a quarter of a second off his teammate. But definitely Charles Leclerc, so far in this session, has been the faster Ferrari driver. You cannot doubt that whatsoever. But I'm now going to update the running order slightly, because it has changed around quite a bit as Alexander Albon starts his first flying lap on the soft tyres. So it's Leclerc P1, then Vettel, Bottas, Hamilton, and then Perez has gone P5 and has pitted. A good lap by Perez, and Perez only a tenth off Lewis Hamilton and Bottas. Very good lap by Perez. If that's because of the Racing Point improvements, then they are really, really looking good. And remember, Perez is not taking a grid penalty. Stroll, we believe, is. As Albon is coming through the middle sector now and into the left-hander before P1. Raikkonen is 7th, Sainz is 8th, and then it is Grosjean 9th. That's a bit more like it by Roman. And then P10 is Gasly. P11 is Antonio Giovinazzi's. Albon is now coming up to the middle sector in just a moment. Kevin Magnussen is P12 as Albon 1.4 seconds down on Charles Leclerc after 2 sectors. That's not great, is it? He's still slower than Max on this lap so far. So yeah, not looking good for Albon, I have to say. Magnussen 12th, Hülkenberg 13th, and then Albon is currently 14th, but Albon is about to improve quite a bit, so we'll see where he goes. Albon comes to the line and goes 8th. That is not a good lap. So Albon is now 8th. That puts Carlos Sainz, who we believe is taking a grid penalty this weekend, Not a massive one, but he is taking a penalty. Down to 10th. And then let's see actually what Hulkenberg can do, because Hulkenberg is now down in 14th and is on a soft tyre run and is coming to the very end of the lap, comes through the exit of the bus stop chicane. And Nico Hulkenberg goes 11th. Not great by Hulkenberg, I have to say, that lap. But there you go, as Giovinazzi improves his time, but is still P12. Gasly is P13, and then it is now Magnussen in 14th. And then 15th is Daniel Ricciardo, but Ricciardo I don't believe has done a soft tyre run as of yet. So any Ricciardo fans out there, such as Nib, calm down. It'll be fine. I'm sure he'll probably go up to P10 or something in a moment. Norris is 17th. Kvyat is 18th, and then it's Russell and Kubica 19th and 20th. Let me just quickly do the end part of that. And there you go. So we are halfway through the session. Of course, hour and a half session. Half of that is 45 minutes. And it is now the 45-minute mark. And we haven't got long left in the quali sims. So as now Max Verstappen is back out on circuit. So hopefully they have solved that issue. On soft tyres he's on. Hopefully we can see Max really give it some and really impress with that car. And if you look at the differences in tyres in terms of the amount you gain from one tyre to the other, I think Max should go at least into P3 as long as he has a good lap, as he now starts his lap. And now comes through La Source, bit skittish on the rear on the exit, but that's just about okay. Comes into Eau Rouge, flat out of course into Radion, and now opens the DRS onto the Kemmel Straight. And let's see what his first sector time is to compare the difference between Ferrari and Honda. And it is 1.1 seconds. That is disgusting, Ferrari. What have you put in your power unit to make yourself a second quicker in the first sector? That is absolutely disgusting. Max now coming into the middle sector, where the Red Bull, of course, will be supreme and will be definitely better than the Ferrari. As he now swings it into Puon. Car sparking away as well. Great to see that. As he comes into the Stavalos. As Daniel Kvyat goes up to P12. We'll update that in a moment. As Max, end of the middle sector, is about 9/10 of a second down on Charles Leclerc. So this will probably put him into P4 or P5. As Lance Stroll has gone 8th in the Racing Point. Still 7/10 down on Perez, but that's good. As Max comes into the final chicane and he's completely bottled it. He went way wide. And Max will not improve on this lap. Nope, he does not. Yep, completely bottled the end of the lap there. And that was probably going to put him into P4 or P5. So shame that he did that. As Ricciardo goes 9th in the Renault. That is a pretty good time. And who else have we got to set a time? I think Pierre Gasly as well. But let me update a couple positions. So Lance Stroll is P8 now, with Alexander Albon in P9, and then Carlos Sainz, I believe, is in P10. As replay of Max Verstappen locking the inside front, going into the bus stop, and yeah, when you lock up the inside front, you're only going to go wide. No way you're going to make the corner. And no, it's not Albon in 9th. It is, of course, Ricciardo in 9th. From Albon in 10th. Bit poor for Albon. Ricciardo Of course, last year's Red Bull driver faster, only just, in a Renault that's what? A second slower than the Red Bull around this circuit. So yeah, that's not good for Alex Albon. As Carlos Sainz is P11. P12 is Roman Grosjean. P13 is Nico Hülkenberg. Bit surprising Hülkenberg's 13th. Normally at Spa he's very strong, but not so far this weekend. As we now go to an ad break, which is very annoying. So it's Kvyat 14th, and now I've got to guess who is elsewhere. Norris, and then I'll put Giovinazzi there. Gasly, I did actually see, was in 17th, so I can put him there. And then who else do we have missing? Magnussen. So I'll put him there, but once we come back from the ad break, I'll correct that if it is actually wrong. We have 40 minutes to go, and it is Ferrari 1-2. If you're a Ferrari fan, then great news so far. But this is Ferrari, don't forget. I'm sure they have a lot of bottles left for this season. And let me quickly post this picture of Charles Leclerc. I just saw someone in the chat saying, calm down on Albon, it's only his first drive. True, I'm not gonna go in on him if he, is half a second or 7/10 off, but I will criticize him because, he has been put into that car to at least do better than Gasly. And being, half a second off on a harder compound of tyre or a softer compound of tyre is not good enough. Even if it's your first drive for a new team, it is not good enough. So I'm not going to go in on him, but I will criticise him because that still isn't good enough, of course. But there you go, Charles Leclerc on screen. And now we go to an ad break. So I'll quickly have another drink and then come back to you guys in a moment. Right, so let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Dinky, I wonder what Daniel Kvyat would do in that Red Bull. I think Daniel would be faster than Albon. I still think Daniel is better than Albon. I know people have said, Albon, may have been faster in qualifying, but if you look at the season overall, qualifying or the race, or if you combine them both for every weekend, I think you can see that Daniel has been better than Albon. So I think if Albon does the same as Gasly, if not worse, then I think Daniel will get the seat for 2020, as long as Daniel beats Gasly. If Gasly beats Daniel and Albon does terribly, then I think Red Bull could honestly go for someone outside of the academy. Maybe a Nico Hülkenberg, who knows? But yeah, I think Kvyat would be faster in a Red Bull. I am going to give Albon a chance, but I still think Albon isn't as good at the moment as Kvyat. I have to stress at the moment because, of course, Albon still has plenty of years to develop and he's not as experienced as Daniel is. So we'll see. We'll see in qualifying if Albon actually does the entire session. We'll see how far off he is in qualifying, but at the moment, yeah, not looking that good if we're being honest. And actually my running order was exactly right, and I guessed from 15th to 18th. So there you go, that is the current running order with 37 minutes to go, as Kvyat I think is coming into his pit box. And yeah, oh no, that's Gasly. The Gasly coming into his pit box, and Pierre Gasly is 17th and 0.2 of a second. Actually, not 0.2, a 1/10.5 off his teammate. That's not the best start to his Toro Rosso debut, I guess. as he now comes back into the pit lane. And I'll quickly post this picture on screen for you guys of Max Verstappen pushing to the max. No pun intended. Let me get this lockup up. There you go. And as we are now getting into the race simulations, which I think the drivers are now going to start doing because it is probably going to be a dry race. Let me know, guys, in the chat any topics you want to discuss, and we'll discuss it for the last 35 minutes to keep ourselves and to keep you guys entertained. There is actually one thing I want to talk about, and I'll kick it off. Apparently, I watched practice 1 this morning, and Ross Brawn was on Sky F1 after the session finished, and Ross Brawn said categorically that he wants to test qualifying races in 2020 for 2021. I massively disagree. I do not want qualifying races. This is not Formula E. This is not a gimmick. You need to keep it as realistic and as, true to sport as you can. You can't start doing qualifying races, and apparently there's a theory that's being discussed amongst the teams and Liberty that there might be certain qualification races for certain races in 2021, which is rubbish. It's complete rubbish. And also, if you're going to do qualifying races, don't do it for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. If you're going to do qualifying races, do it for every race, because you cannot start prioritizing one race or certain races over another. I'm sorry, you can't do that. So, I massively disagree. I don't want to see qualifying races. Qualifying is fine. How many times have we said this? How many times have we talked about qualifying being absolutely fine? But then they go and create the 2016 system, which was complete rubbish. And I don't see how in a million years anyone thought that would work. That got announced midway through testing in 2016, pre-season testing, of course. And I looked at it and I said and thought, this ain't going to work. They are going to get rid of this by China. And what did they do? They got rid of it by China because it was a disaster. Because no one at the track knew what was going on, and no one at home knew what was going on. If people watching at home don't know what's going on, then how does that help the people at the circuit? People at the circuit, at the best of times, are not entirely sure of what is going on, because it is hard to follow a Grand Prix when you're at the circuit unless you have a TV in front of you. So, that was a disaster. This qualifying system we currently have has been a massive success. We've had it since 2006 for a reason. Why are they trying to make a new one? I understand they want to make Saturdays and Fridays more fun, but there are better ways to do it than to make a new qualifying system. There is better ways to do it. And what they are suggesting is not it. It is not it at all. Let me know in the chat, guys. As by the way, the race simulations have officially started. We're on board on my TV with Checo Perez. Let me know in the chat. What do you think of that? Do you want qualifying races or do you not? I hate the idea of qualifying races. I don't see what it improves. I don't see the point of it. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as they get the cars in terms of how they follow right for 2021, then who cares about qualifying? As long as the races on the Sunday is great, like we've had for the last 4 races, then who cares if qualifying is exciting or not? At the end of the day, qualifying, all it is setting the grid for the race. The focus for entertainment should be on the race, on the Sunday, not on a Saturday. Yeah, you have to make sure you don't have a convoluted qualifying system. But again, when it comes to the on-track stuff, most of the focus should be on the race because people watch Formula One for the race. Like, for example, when you watch, I don't know, boxing or UFC, you don't watch the fights building up to the main event and then not the main event. People tune in to watch the main event. The main event in Formula One is the race. Solve that and the issues with following in a race situation and everything will fall into place. No need for qualifying races. Right, let me find some other comments about this. And guys, let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? As you can tell, I really do not agree with qualifying races. Let me find some comments. Crystal Racing says, I'd rather have 3 back-to-back quali sessions of all 3 sessions fastest laps added together like in 2005. But there's no need to change the current format. Yeah, there isn't. If something isn't broke, don't fix it. Concentrate on the stuff that needs fixing. That's one thing I really dislike about Liberty Media is some of the stuff they've changed didn't need to be changed. They didn't need to be. Like grid girls or, you know, the race times being, you know, an hour and 10 minutes later. Those things did not need to be fixed. There was nothing wrong with those things. Fix the things that are actually, you know, at fault for why Formula One is not doing as well as it should. Don't fix issues that aren't there. Don't create issues that aren't there. Because that is simply not going to work. Right, let me find some other comments about this. They should just keep it the way it is now, says Stinky. Yep, I agree. They should. No, again, no need to do something else. Right, let me find some other comments here. Crystal Racing again says appreciate. I thought it said appreciate. It says aggregate. Kind of looks the same from a distance. Aggregate qualifying would be fun to watch with all 20 cars competing in all 3 sessions with F1 fighting for space in 15-minute slots. True, but again, as you said earlier, we don't need a new system. The qualifying system we have now is probably the best qualifying system we've ever had. The only one that could rival it was the one pre-1996, in my opinion. Because the one pre-1996 that we had in the 80s and 90s was you would have 2 qualifying sessions on a Friday and a Saturday, both at the same time, you know, 1 p.m, 2 p.m. local time. And basically, out of the 2, I think, hour sessions on the respective days, your best lap time would be took as your lap time for qualifying. And that's, you know, where you qualified. That's the only system that I think has worked really well compared to, you know, the current system we have. And I wouldn't mind seeing that old pre-1996 quali system back because it would actually make, you know, Fridays very important because say if it was dry on a Friday and wet on a Saturday, then qualifying would, in theory, be on Friday. See what I mean? So that's the only other system I've actually liked when it's come to qualifying. All the others, not really a fan. And, you know, this one we currently have, I am a fan. So this one and that old one, those are the 2 best ones. All the other ones I'm not really keen on. And any, you know, qualifying races, I'm really not keen on. Let's find some other comments here. And also, let me try and get up a different picture for you guys. As yet, we are on our race simulations at circuit. 27 minutes to go at Spa. As currently we're looking at Lance Stroll, who with his quali sim went P8. Pretty good lap time, if you ask me. Still quite a bit down on his teammate, but at least he's up there. And definitely Racing Point have improved their car. I know Spa normally suits them, but They are really looking good, Racing Point. But I'll get a different picture up if I can of a Mercedes, because I haven't put a Mercedes on screen so far. I've got a good one of Valtteri Bottas, who, of course, the news came out that Valtteri will be staying at Mercedes for 2020, and it was his 30th birthday on Thursday, I think it was, or Wednesday. So, yeah, happy birthday to him, and a great present came his way on Thursday. Right, so here you go. Here he is, Valtteri Bottas. As I'm currently on the TV, we're seeing Carlos Sainz on the soft tyres doing a race sim. And let me just adjust this. There you go. Valtteri down the mediums. Right, let's read out what you guys are saying. I don't think Gasly is any better than Stroll, says Crystal Racing. That, you know what, that is an interesting debate, because if you look at certain races, Stroll has been better. For example, Australia, Stroll finished ahead of Gasly only just in a car that was, what, a second and a half slower. I wouldn't say he was better in Shanghai. I think Gasly improved a lot. Baku, I'd say Gasly was better. Canada, definitely Lance Stroll was better. I know Gasly beat him in the race, but Stroll, when he hadn't pitted yet and Gasly had, Stroll was actually pulling away from Gasly. So, definitely Lance was better. France, Lance was better. Austria, probably I'd say Lance as well. And then Hockenheim, of course, Lance was better. And in Hungary, I'd probably say Gasly, because Lance was miles off his teammate in Hungary. So, between Gasly and Stroll, it's a 50-50. It'll be good to see what Gasly can do now against, you know, a driver like Lance Stroll, now that Gasly's in the Toro Rosso. So it'll be interesting to see how those two get on against one another. But, yeah, if you look at the season so far, they've been about 50-50. And if you're Gasly, that's not a good thing, because Stroll is not a top 10 driver on the grid. Maybe not even top 15. So, yeah, not good for Gasly at all. But let's read out some other comments. By the way, hello to Stella. Great to see you. Another one of our moderators. Let me find some other comments here. Crystal Racing saying Liberty Media are obsessed with changing everything because they have a corporate mentality to please their partners, sadly. I understand that. I understand why they did that. I completely understand why, but that doesn't make it right. At the end of the day, they got rid of something that didn't really add or subtract from the show. No one really, you know, no one came to races to look at the grid girls. I can guarantee you that. But, you know, getting rid of them and all the news that came with it was really a pointless exercise. It really, really was. So, yeah, that's why I didn't really see the point in getting rid of them, because it was a useless, you know, it was a waste of time doing it. Complete waste of time. And also took away a very healthy living for those girls who came to the races as grid girls. So in fact, for those women, they really hurt their livelihoods by doing that. So yeah, not great. But anyway, we'll move on from that before we trigger someone. Crystal Racing also says F1 is suffering a huge existential crisis. There is actually a video I have planned soon to do with Liberty, and put it this way, I'm not keen on Liberty anymore like I was. I think a lot of what they've done or not done is Lewis Hamilton goes deep at the bus stop and goes off the track but gets back on. A lot of what they've done has not really been that good, and even the 2019 regulations, I don't think have had an effect on the racing. Even the drivers have said, when they've been asked, you know, do the new front wings make a difference in following? They all say no, there is no difference. So I'm not seeing any real good work from them. The only thing they've done which has improved Formula One in any way, shape or form is the social media side. They've definitely improved that. But saying that, you know, me and other F1 YouTubers getting copyright strikes for no reason is not really, in a sense, helping the social media and internet, you know, boost for Formula One. But that's the only thing you can point to and say Liberty have done really well on is social media. But in my opinion, as long as the racing is good, I don't think social media matters massively like they think it does. It does matter a lot, and you've got to make sure it's good so you can be inclusive to fans. But as long as the racing is good, I don't think the social media side is, you know, critical or anything like that. For example, back in 2012, we had the best season ever in Formula One history. Formula One didn't really have at all a social media presence because they didn't need to, because the racing on track was so good that they didn't need to hype up the sport. The sport on the circuit was doing it itself. So, you know, and I think Martin Brundle has said this before, sort out the racing on the circuit and everything else will fall into place. Bang on. Absolutely bang on. And yeah, I fully agree with that. But as I now look back towards the TV with 19 and a half minutes to go in practice 2, we're currently looking at Toro Rosso going into Eau Rouge. It's Gasly in the Toro Rosso. And hold on a minute, let me just clear my throat again. And let me just read out some more comments from you guys in the chat. Right, let me find some good comments here from you guys. And right, let me just find a good one. Finley, right, this is a good one. He asks, Finley D30, should Renault replace Cyril Abiteboul? I think they need a stronger leader. Yeah, they should. Cyril he's not a good leader. I don't believe Renault are going anywhere with him as the team principal. And someone brought to my attention from the, or in the comment section of my video, which you can check out, by the way, my thoughts on the news, Esteban Ocon is going to be at Renault in 2020 alongside Daniel Ricciardo. If you want to check that out, it's in the description down below. Someone brought to my attention that they got rid of Frederic Vasseur for Cyril to be the team principal. And you cannot tell me that Vasseur, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, sorry about that, but I'll, you know, try my best. You cannot tell me that he is worse than Cyril. No way at all. Look at what Frederic has done at Alpha / Sauber. He took Sauber from the worst team on the grid to a team right now who could finish and really should finish based on the car they have in the top 5 in the Constructors' Championship. That is the type of progress Renault need right now, because I just don't see Renault getting up to the top with their current way, with their current, you know, management structure. I just don't see it. I think Renault, if Renault get the 2021 regulations right, I think Renault can definitely get closer, but I don't see Renault getting to a world championship level. I think at best they could win a couple races by 2023. But is that really what Renault came back into Formula One for, to win a couple races and then go backwards again? Clearly it's not. So, yeah, from a Renault point of view, yeah, I think I think they should get rid of Cyril, especially if they don't finish in the top 5 in the constructors. If Toro Rosso and Alpha beat them, which I think is a real possibility, and even Racing Point start to get up to them and beat them, then you cannot show me enough evidence to suggest that Cyril Abiteboul should stay at Renault. You can't. You absolutely can't. And then who replaces him? Maybe you go for Frederic Vasseur. Maybe Alain Prost. He ran a team before. Not that it was a disaster, of course. Yeah, I think Cyril, he's not a good team principal. He's absolutely not. The Renault team have just not made enough progress since they came back into Formula 1. They really haven't. Right. Let me now get a different picture on the screen for you guys. By the way, running order is still the same because everyone is doing their race sim. 15 minutes to go. I'll remind you what what the running order is. It's Leclerc P1, then Vettel, Bottas, Hamilton, Perez, Verstappen, Raikkonen, Stroll, Ricciardo, Albon, Sainz, Grosjean, Hülkenberg, Kvyat, Norris, Giovinazzi, Gasly, Magnussen, Russell, Kubica. That is your order with 15.5 minutes to go. And before I get a different picture on the screen, just want to say, don't forget to subscribe, guys, for more content like this, as we do watch-alongs for Practice 2, qualifying in the race consistently for every race weekend, non-stop. So don't forget to subscribe for that, bottom right of the screen. And you can do it right there, or go to my homepage and do it there, subscribe, and also hit the notifications bell and hit the like button if you do want to help out the channel, because hitting the like button does actually improve, the channel and helps us get found. So make sure to do that as well. But let me now get a picture up for the first time, I think today, of Lewis Hamilton. Let me get that up on screen. As Max Verstappen on his race sim. Coming through the middle sector. And here you go. Here is Lewis Hamilton. And I'll just enlarge that. And there you go. Right, let's see what you guys, or what else you guys are saying in the chat in reaction to what I've said or whatever. And Crystal Racing, I just missed that comment. Crystal Racing saying the 2010s is going down as the worst decade of F1, no doubt. I'd probably agree with that. I think it started off really well, but the hybrid era really did eliminate that, all that great stuff we had. And also, I think ultimately, after 5 years of the hybrid era, I don't think it has actually improved things, compared to before 2014. And really, if you look at Formula 1 and the gaps between, the cars and the teams, you may think it's aerodynamic, and in certain cases it is, but the reason we have Charles Leclerc 1.5 seconds ahead of Daniel Ricciardo is because of the hybrids, of the power units. If it was 2013 or 2012, and back then all the engines were basically the same, it came down, the racing, in 2012 or 2013, it came down to grip. Basically, the team with the most grip won most of the time. If you take out the difference in power, Ricciardo is what? Half a second off at worst? See what I mean? So the hybrid era has really eliminated competition between the top teams and the midfield. That's why the midfield can't compete with the top teams, because of the power units, because of the difference in power between many of the teams. Yes, Ferrari have their power units in the Alpha and the Haas, and there is a big difference there. But if you look at other teams who, again, like Renault and McLaren and teams like that, if you look at the aerodynamic balance or chassis of each car, the gaps are not as big as it says. It's mostly down to power. So that's why we really struggle for competition, is because of the hybrids. And it's not a surprise. The reintroduction of turbos was just a reintroduction of what we had in the 80s, really. And in the 80s, it was exactly the same. The top teams were at the top, and the midfield had no hope of beating them. They were at times a second or 2 seconds or even 3 seconds off the pace. Yeah, and, it eliminates competition. So, that's what turbos do in Formula 1. Yes, it's great pieces of technology and it's advancing Formula 1 in many ways, but it's not helping the midfield compete. It's not. The midfield is unable to compete as much as it was because of the turbo era that we are currently in. And if we were in a naturally aspirated era right now, I guarantee you it'd be a lot closer at the top, a lot closer. We'd have great races a lot more if we weren't, in a turbo era. So I think that's mostly why the 2010s have been a disaster for racing in Formula 1, because turbos were brought back in. And turbos, even though people in the 80s like to say that, back then in the good old days, turbos were around and, the racing was great. It really wasn't. It really wasn't. There was no real competition and the racing wasn't that great. So that's really why the 2010s racing-wise have not been that good, because we went to turbos. If we stayed with the V8s, it would have been a lot better. No doubt about it. Even if Red Bull was still at the front. And also, Crystal Racing says, are Renault even going to finish in P6? I don't think that's a guarantee, because are they going to massively outscore Toro Rosso in the final 9 races? Not sure about that. And I think Toro Rosso will score points in the final 9 races. I don't know how many, but they will continue to finish in the points. And Alpha, they'll beat Renault because Alpha have a better car. All-around car, power unit, chassis, whatever you want to call it. They have a better all-around car than Renault. And if Racing Point can, use these new upgrades and the new B-Spec car to their advantage, then I think Racing Point could catch and beat Renault. I don't think Haas can, but Renault could end up P8 at the end of the season in the Constructors. I think they're likely to end up P6 at best. But yeah, not looking good for Renault at all. It's really not looking good for Renault at all. Mostly an F1 fan. Asks, what is the first F1 race you saw? The first F1 race I saw was the 2011 Japanese Grand Prix. That's the first race I ever saw, and that's what got me into Formula 1, and the rest is history. And of course, if you're an F1 geek like me, you'll remember that race being Sebastian Vettel's second world title win. That's what that race was. So, and that race also was a great race. So it was a great introduction to Formula 1. Thankfully, I got into Formula 1 then, because if I watched a race from 2014, I don't think I'd be a Formula 1 fan if a race in 2014 was my first race. And that's the thing with, getting new fans in, is you've got to make sure your product is mostly doing well in terms of the racing on circuit for Liberty and Formula 1. Because let's say the French Grand Prix was many people's first F1 race, they're never going to watch again, because Formula 1 put on a horrible show. And if you watch that race and that was your first race, you're not going to be like, well, I'm definitely going to watch the next race. Of course you're not, because you want a good introduction to Formula 1, and that wasn't it. So yeah. Right, let me post one final picture, and then we will come to the end of the stream soon. 7 minutes to go in practice 2. We're currently on Sky F1 on an ad break, so I can't see what's going on at the moment as we now come back from it. And yeah, everyone doing their race sim on the soft, on the hard, on the medium tyres. Getting their practice in. There's a Ferrari there of Charles Leclerc on your screen. Right, let me find some other comments here. Bristol Racing says the sound has nothing to do with the racing. By the way, 1980s is a very overrated era. It is. It definitely is, because if you look at the first half of the 80s, in terms of competition and racing, it was very, very good. Why? Because most of the cars were naturally aspirated. But then once everyone went to turbos by 1984, if you look from about 84 to 88 when turbos were banned, there was no real parity in Formula 1. In 84, McLaren won almost every race. In 85, you had a bit more parity. You had McLaren, Lotus, Williams and Ferrari. But then in 1986 and 1987, the Honda-powered teams dominated. Even though Alain Prost won the title in 1986 in a tag McLaren, it wasn't, a great season, 1986. Yeah, there were some unpredictable races here and there, but the racing wasn't epic. And by the way, I actually went back a few months ago and saw the 1986 Australian Grand Prix. You guys may know that's the race where Mansell had his tyre blow up and Piquet had to pit again because they thought he was going to have a blow up, and Prost somehow, some way, won the championship. As we've got a yellow flag in sector 2, and it is Sergio Perez has parked it because his car is on fire at the rear. He's had a reliability issue. Everything looks like it's on fire. His brakes and the virtual safety car has come out. The reliability issues there for Racing Point, not what you want to see, especially with Perez up in P5 in this session. But just to finish what I was saying, I went back and looked at that entire race, and it was the commentary was Murray Walker and James Hunt. That race is really overrated. The only exciting parts of the race, as Perez is very, very distraught, he knows that's probably going to be a grid penalty. The only exciting part of the race was a bit at the start when a few drivers at the top were overtaking, but after that, the only exciting thing was Mansell's tyre blow up. Everything else was boring. So, yeah, the 1980s definitely is an overrated era. It's because someone, I don't know who said this. It might have been Crystal Racing who might have said this, or someone who he was talking to, because I think I looked at one of your Twitter posts one time, and someone, I think, said people remember the 80s as being great because it was a long time ago, so they only remember, big, key, exciting moments. That's why that era is looked upon in such a great way, when if you go back and actually watch the races, they weren't that great. They really weren't. As Perez parks up at the hairpin before the left-hander going down to Pouon. So, yeah, disappointing there for Perez. And also, and Astro Stewart says, disagree, Chaz. First lap was awesome. End was awesome. PK pitting. As I said, that's not... If you look at the race, it wasn't that great. The early laps were good, very good. But after that, except for Mansell's tyre blow-up, nothing happened. Nothing really happened. What was I going to say? I'm going to read out some more comments. That's what I'm going to do. And yeah, Paul Perez, definitely P5 in practice too. And you know what? Based on the Racing Point car being as great as it has been so far today and what it is likely to be this weekend, that is a real shame for Perez, because if he doesn't have to take a penalty for power unit issues that he might have to now he's had an issue, Perez could be at the front of the midfield. He could be in P5 or P6 in the race if there's reliability issues or crashes ahead of him at the top. So Yeah, not looking great there for Perez, and now a red flag. So the session is over. So I'm going to get rid of the timer because the session now is effectively over with 90 seconds to go. So FP2 is now over, and I'm going to get a final picture up, and then we'll get to reacting quickly to what's happened in practice 2 today. By the way, thank you guys for coming along and being part of the stream. Great to have you guys along as always. Have about, what, 215, 220 of you along. Great to have you all here. And Nib has just said, from what I've seen, Ferrari's race pace is shambolic compared to Merc and Red Bull. Not really a surprise, because Ferrari this weekend have actually gone for a lower wing setup, even though they have such power. So clearly Ferrari are going for it in qualifying. They don't care about their race pace. They think they can just stay ahead. Well, if they think that, they've got another thing coming. Also, Lance Stroll reported a burning smell in his car before Perez had his issue. So maybe a double issue there, who knows. But let me now get a picture up of a Ferrari, because they have ended up P1 and P2 today, and of course they deserve plaudits for being up there. But as Nib said, race pace not looking too great, not surprised though. And there you go. Let me just put it down here. So, Ferrari, when it comes to qualifying pace, they are definitely the team to beat. But can Mercedes tomorrow close the gap? I think they will. I don't think Mercedes are going to be 0.8 of a second off pole. But I think definitely if Ferrari do not make a mistake, you know, they don't bottle it and their drivers don't bottle it, based on the pace we've seen so far, I don't see how Ferrari won't be on pole, if not the front row. They have to get pole position. They absolutely have to. No excuses whatsoever. For Mercedes, I think they'll be on the second row. They're in there. They're not quite there, but they're, you know, in there, and that's all they need to be. Because as Nib said, for the race, they're going to have a lot faster of a car, and over the 44 laps, I would put my money on them winning instead of Ferrari. Red Bull, as expected, over a single lap, no real pace compared to Ferrari and Mercedes. For the race, I think Red Bull are going to be there, but yeah, in terms of qualifying pace, yeah, no real pace for Red Bull. But as I just said, that's not exactly a surprise, is it? Now into the midfield, Renault, even though they have grid penalties, their pace so far isn't too bad. But again, because of the grid penalties they're going to get, they're not in terms of where they're going to start for the race, they're not in for a great starting position. So Renault not looking great in terms of where they'll start for the race. But in terms of one lap pace, it's not looking too bad. Not looking too bad. McLaren, not as good as I thought they would be. They're definitely off the pace so far. Hopefully they can improve. I think they will. But they're not right there where I thought they would be. They're definitely slower than Racing Point, and I'd say Alfa Romeo so far this weekend. But I'm sure they can improve once we get to qualifying. Alfa looking very good with Kimi Räikkönen. I think Kimi, you know, will be absolutely in there in the top 8 or 9. And hopefully for Alfa and Kimi Räikkönen, Racing Point, McLaren, Renault, you know, all those teams take their grid penalties, because if they do, then Kimi will have a high starting position, meaning that Kimi could get some very, very important points for Alfa in the Constructors on Sunday. Haas, they're not looking good. They're not looking good. I don't think they're in for a great qualifying tomorrow. I think the best they can do is a P11 or P12. I don't think the Haas is really that good. And as we know it, when it comes to race pace, they're going to be miles off. Toro Rosso, They're dead slow. Not a massive surprise because they don't quite have the power and they've never really been great when it comes to qualifying pace around Spa. But yeah, not looking great for Toro Rosso. Racing Point, though, looking very strong. If Sergio Perez doesn't have to take a penalty, I think Perez is right there with Kimi Raikkonen to finish at the front of the midfield in qualifying and in the race. The Racing Point, look out for them in qualifying if Perez doesn't have to take a penalty for the race, of course. And Williams, obviously, are at the very back. But guys, that has been it for the Practice 2 session today. And guys, thank you for coming along and being a part of the stream. As always, great to have you guys along and watching along the session as always. Just to let you guys know, I will be live tomorrow at 1 PM UK time for qualifying for the 2019 Belgian Grand Prix. And it's a session where we are going to have a few surprises and definitely a close session, maybe even at the top as well. So definitely don't forget to tune in tomorrow for qualifying at 1 PM UK time. And then, of course, about an hour after the session finishes, or an hour and a half after the session finishes, I will have a recorded review of qualifying out for you guys on the channel. So don't forget to subscribe for that content coming up tomorrow. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my homepage, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. Also, hit the like button if you want to see this content continue, and it does help out the channel, so make sure to hit the like button. Also, don't forget to check out my latest video to do with Esteban Ocon going to Renault for 2020. I covered that in a live stream yesterday, so make sure to check that out in the description. And also, don't forget to check out the preview for this race that me and Nib did a week ago, where you can get our thoughts on who we think will finish where for this weekend. And also, comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below after practice 2, who do you think will finish where in qualifying? What are your predictions for qualifying based on what we've seen so far? Let me know in the comments, and also comment down below what you think about, anything else I've discussed, whether it's qualifying races, the turbo era being, boring or whatever. Let me know in the comments and I'll reply to you. And also, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. Best place for notifications for my videos and streams is the Discord server, so don't forget to join that. And also, it's the hardcore Chazza HDF1 community, and during a race weekend, it is pretty active. We have over 300 people in that server. And also, don't forget to follow my Facebook, Chazza HDF1, and also follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110, and check out my website, chazahd.com, for more content like this. But guys, until qualifying tomorrow, live on the channel at 1 PM UK time, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.